Next topic is action view, form helpers. So the form helpers are the ones you are going to use the most. You're basically using form helpers to get the data from a user. Okay, so let's look into these form helpers in a bit more detail. Oops, sorry. So these are the set of topics we are going to cover. So we're going to learn what a form helper is. And there are in fact 3 different types of form helpers. We're going to actually look into these 3 different types of form helpers in detail, and select box helpers and date and time form helpers and helper modules. Okay, so what is a form helper? By the way, when I say form helper, we're talking about the form tag basically. What is a form? Form is very important in building web application because form is used to get the data from a user. Okay, and of course you can write your form using raw HTML, but that is going to be very cumbersome. Obviously Rails help on this by providing a set of form helpers. Okay, so there are 3 different types of form helpers in Rails, and the type number 1 is called tag helpers because the names of these helpers end with underscore tag, and sometimes we call it form tag helpers. So form tag helpers or tag helpers. Okay, same thing. And the second type is a model object helpers, and these are sometimes called the form helpers. Okay, so this is form tag helpers and this is form helpers. Okay, and this guy doesn't have the tag postfix. Okay, so this guy's type 1 has the underscore tag helpers, and this one doesn't have it, and they actually have shared exactly the same name. Okay, so that is in fact the text field underscore tag helper, and there is a text field helper. Okay, and we'll see the differences between the two. So the first type that ends with underscore tag helpers are not intended to be used with a model object. Okay, you could still use these tag helpers with your model object, but you have to be responsible for building the name in the form of model and attribute like this. It's your responsibility. Okay, remember on the first day, like when we learned the Rails basics, we have seen the input field. When it's actually trying to assign a particular property of a model, you have to construct it like this, right? Okay, so that's what you have to do when you're using form tag helpers. Okay, but when you're using model object helpers, it's a bit easier, and it's actually intended to be used a model object. Okay, and the third type is actually from a form builder. All right. I just want to give you a big picture. We're going to actually take a look at in each of these in a bit more detail. So don't worry about it if you don't understand what I'm talking about. So let's move on to type 1. These are called tag helpers because, again, the names of these helpers end with underscore tag. Okay, so these tag helpers, or form tag helpers, generate a single input element. Okay, and the first parameter of the form tag helper is always the name of the input. So let's see an example. So suppose if you are using text field tag, so this is the name of the tag helper of this guy, and when you're passing an argument, okay, that is used for both ID and name. Okay, so mainly for the name of the input. Okay. And when this is submitted, it will be captured as params query. In this case, the name happened to be query. Okay, so nothing really surprising here, right? Okay. Oops, sorry. So these are the examples of form tag helpers. So every every helper ends with underscore tag. Okay, so text field tag, checkbox tag, label tag, and things like that. Now we have the telephone field tag, but this works only on HTML5 enabled browser, URL field tag, and the email field tag. And let's take a look at how text field tag helper is being used Okay, you know, these are various examples of using this helper. So it basically creates the standard text field. Okay, so here when you say text field tag and the name, and then it's going to be set the name. Okay, you can also pass the second argument, which is going to be set the value of that input, the text field. And you can also use the placeholder. Okay, and then it will set the placeholder attribute. Okay, you can also actually use a class. This is actually setting CSS class style. Okay, CSS style class. Okay, and when you specify the size, then it will set the size attribute. Okay, all right. So this is typically used, you know, when you are performing like a search query and things like that. That has nothing to do with the model. Okay. Oops. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm gonna just use this one. Okay, so form tag helper with no argument. So this is a case we're using form tag. Okay. So when called without arguments, form tag creates a form tag which, when submitted, will post to the current page. Okay, so suppose if you have these 3 lines of code, okay, it will generate this HTML. So assuming the current page is home/index, it will set the action to the current page, and then the method will be set to post. Okay, and it does actually include the UTF-8 and also the authenticity token. Okay. So this is actually character encoding. Okay, and this one is actually for cross-site request forgery protection. Okay, so it gets generated for every non-get form. So whenever you actually posting something, this value will be actually sent to the server. Okay. So this is basically, you know, for cross-site request forgery protection. Remember in your the application controller. Oops, what am I doing? Yeah, so this is protect from forgery. Okay. All right, moving forward. So generic search form example. So one of the most basic forms you see on the web is, let's say, search form. So typically the search form will include these elements. It will have a form element with form tag, okay, and it will probably have a label, and then text field tag, and then submit tag. Okay. Okay, so generic search form and the ID attribute. So when you actually create a search like this, okay, okay, so I'm actually talking about the yeah, so form tag with a search, and I'm talking about this guy. So when you actually use this tag helper with a name, right? It also actually sets the ID. Okay, so ID for this element could be used, you know, for CSS styling and things like that. Okay, so in addition to setting the name, it also sets the ID, the same value. Okay, all right. So let's do exercise 1. So let's go to exercise 1. So basically, we are going to do the same thing for creating our sample application. Okay. So let's see, Rails generate scaffold, and I just did that, and I'm gonna actually do rake db migrate so that I create the tables. Rake db migrate. Okay, and then we're gonna use this form tag with no content. Okay, so we are going to actually change. Yeah, so we're gonna actually add search and look. The method. Okay, so we want to change routes.lb file. Okay, so we want to add this collection to get, so that we can use the collection and then slash search and slash look, like this. Okay. And then we're going to add a search method. Okay, so controller, student controller, and we are going to just add the search action. Not that one. Okay. All right. So we just added a search action. And then we are going to create search html.elb file. Okay, so this is the when search is done, when this is invoked, then this search html.elb file will be displayed, and so we are going to use the form tag for that. Okay, so we are going to create on the views and the students, and then new file. And it's going to be search and html.elb. Okay, and we are going to just create a form tag, and we're going to actually kind of modify this one later on. For now, we just want to actually see what kind of the HTML gets generated. Okay, so now we are going to actually start the server. And Rails server, and then we are going to go student and search. Okay, so I'm going to just copy the link, and I'm going to do this here. All right, so it does actually display this form content, right? Now if you want to actually see the source, I'm going to just use the lab documentation. So now we want to see the source, page source. And you can see this is what gets created. Okay, so basically that's what I described in this page. Okay, this is what gets created in HTML. Okay, all right, that's the first exercise. Now we are going to use a form tag. So we're going to actually modify. We're going to modify this student html.elb file. Now we want to, when the form is submitted, we want to go to student search method, and then the method is going to be get, and we're going to basically providing search kind of field. Okay, so label tag is going to be called the query, and so this is actually for this field, and it's going to be labeled with a search for and then submit. Okay, so I'm going to just copy the whole thing. And save the change. And then we are going to refresh the browser. So now if I refresh the browser, it should actually display this search for form tag helper. Okay. Again, if you take a look at the source, okay, so this is what you should see. So this is a label element, this is input field, okay, name is query, and then submit. And the action is going to search method. Okay, method is going to be HTTP get. Okay. Alright, so now we are going to change the application HTML layout file so that we are going to observe what is being passed to the server from the client. So let's change application HTML and we just want to have this debug statement, which we have done before. And now we want to enter some data, let's say JPassion.com, and search, and you can see the query is the data that we just entered, and the action is search. Okay, and the controller, obviously students, action, yeah, so these are actually control and actions. Okay, so that's basically what you observe. Okay, all right, so it's 11:20, so I'll give you guys about 7 minutes, and let's have a 10 minutes break. So we will be back 11 140. Okay. The next tag helper is checkboxes. Checkboxes are form controls that give user a set of options. They are enable or disable. The first parameter is the name of the input, and the second parameter is the value of the input. So if you happen to use checkbox tag, and in this case just happen to be the name of just a single argument, right? And a single argument here, and then what gets generated is going to be pet dog, and the name is pet dog. Yeah. So, and the type checkbox is, and value is set as a default 1. Radio buttons work pretty much the same, and it basically it specifies set of options, and they are mutually exclusive. So the difference between checkboxes, checkboxes you can select multiple, but here radio buttons is actually mutually exclusive, meaning user can select only one. So here we have a radio button age, and the value that will be displayed is child and adult, and basically it will display as a name like this. Okay, and these are set of other form tag helpers: text area tag, password field tag, hidden field tag, search field, telephone, UL. It's basically generate HTML like this. Okay. So let me just kind of explain the form tag helpers exercise, and we're going to just move forward. Yeah. Basically, we use checkbox tag and radio button tag helpers, and basically you are just copying these guys, and then you're going to refresh the page, and you're going to see these radio buttons here, and this is the checkboxes. Okay. And values, you can certainly observe the values that are coming from the client in terms of params. So you can see params pet dog and params pet cat set to 1. Okay, so and then to that 2 using other tag helpers. Okay, so again, label tag, text field tag, and label tag, checkbox, and oh yes, so these are the ones that you're adding it, right? Password, hidden field, and things like that. So what you're going to see is something like this. Okay, and enter some values into the fields. Observe that search field has an auto completion feature built in. Okay, things like this. Yeah, that's cool. And you submit the form, and you observe the parameters. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move forward. Nothing complicated. So I'm going to just move forward. Alright, so what we have seen is type 1, which is called the tag helpers, because these helpers end with the underscore tag. Type 2, the second type is called the model object helpers, what we just call them form helpers. Okay. And why model object helpers? Is particularly common task for the form is for editing and creating a model object. Okay. Search field, it has nothing to do with a form, the model object, right? So that's the time you want to use the tag helper. However, in many cases, what you want to capture from a user has a correspondence to a model object. Okay, so that's the time you want to use a model object helpers or form helpers. Okay, as I said before, you can certainly use a tag helpers to capture them as as a model object, but you have to do a bit more work. That's the that's the difference. Okay, so model object helpers are specifically tailored for this task, meaning the association with a model object. Okay, as I said before, these model object helpers do not have underscore tag suffix, but exactly the same name. So text field and text area, as opposed to text field tag or text area tag. Okay, so same set of helpers are provided in the form of tag helpers or non-tag helpers or model object helpers. Okay, so model object helpers are you basically, whenever you say model object helper like a text field, the first argument is the name of the model, and the second argument is the name of the property of the model. So it's a little bit more convenient than using a tag helpers to associate a model. Okay, and what gets generated is this format. Okay, student and name. And when Rails receive this one, it will actually consider this one as a model, and this one will consider as a property of that model. Okay. So upon submission, the value entered by the user will be stored at params, student, and name. Okay, and this is a model, and this is a property. Okay, and this param student, that basically represent a student model object. Okay, that contains all the properties. But if you want to access those properties, then you can actually have this multidimensional params. So these are the set of model object helpers, and you can see they are pretty much the same with the tag helpers. It just doesn't have underscore tag postfix. So if you compare form tag helpers, so these are form tag helpers and model object helpers. Let's assume you want to use either of these to provide a model object association. Then if you're using form tag helpers, it's your responsibility that you have to construct a format like this. This is a name that is going to be used to create the name attribute, right? Like this. So if you actually make a mistake, okay, like instead of using a bracket, instead if you use the parentheses or something like that, then it's not going to work. Okay. However, if you're using model object helpers, all you have to do is basically providing the name of the model and the name of the property. So this is a lot more, well, I wouldn't say a lot more, but more convenient to use than form tag helpers when you want to associate these helpers to a model object. Okay, so either way, what gets generated is going to be the same. Okay, user name and user phone and user homepage and user address, and then Rails will consider this one as the model, and this one as, well, actually what gets generated underneath is these params, as I said before. Okay, so when these params are coming in this format, basically the first one is the model, the second one is the property of that model. Okay. All right, so that is type 2. Type 3 is a model object helpers, form helpers used with the form builder object. Okay. So what you can do is that you can use form 4 model object helper. Okay, so this you can think of as a method, and then this is the model object argument, and then we have a hash argument. Okay, and then we have a code block, right? Okay. So in this case, URL action is create, and this is class is basically CSS style. So you can just, you don't worry about this thing. So what's important is form 4 article. So when you're using form 4, what you're saying is that I am actually accessing model object represented by this article object. Okay, and then we have a code block, and this form this F is actually representing what is called the form builder object, and then you can just call the text field, text area, and submit to represent the properties. So this might be a little bit more convenient than the previous two, because here you just specify the model, and then you just specify the property. Okay, like a title body. So so model object gets specified just once. Okay, in the previous case, in type 2, you still have to actually replicate these models for all the fields, right? But in here, you just specify the model object, and then basically you specify properties. Okay, and again, the generated HTML output is going to be the same, meaning model and bracket and property. Okay, so form 4 for RESTful resources. So when dealing with the RESTful resources, call for form 4 can get even simpler. Okay, and if you rely on record identification. So basically, this is the same thing as this. Yeah, so this is a long style, so you can use article. This is the model, and then this is the path. Okay, and this is actually the same thing as this. Okay, and this one editing. So this is creating, and this is for editing. Okay, You just to say form article. In fact, you can see this is for creating and this is for editing, right? The same syntax. This is a long style, and this is a long style, okay? But this is the short style, and short style looks the same, right? And the Rails have intelligence to figure out whether this is in fact creating a new article or editing an article, because it knows whether this is present or not. Okay, all right. Okay, compare 3 form helpers. So let's take a look at exercise 3. So that's so create a model object in an action. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to create student object in search. Okay, so we create a student object, and we save. Okay, and this is a strong parameters. Okay, and then we are going to use the search HTML5 file. We are going to use first form tag helpers. Okay, so we have to construct student name like this ourselves when you're using tag helpers like this. Okay, but it should work. Okay, so you refresh the browser and you should be able to see this one. You can enter, and that should work fine. 3.2, instead of using tag helpers, we are going to use a model object helper. So you don't have to use the underscore tag. Instead, you're going to use a text field, and both cases text field, and then you provide a name of the model, and then second argument is the name of the property. So this is a bit simpler. That's 3.2, work the same. And 3.3, now we are using form builder. Okay, so basically form builder, we provide the model object, and then we provide the property. Okay, and that's it. So I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes to do exercise 3. Exercise 2, if you just have time, just copy the code and see how that works out. Okay, so I'll give you 10 minutes to do exercise 3 mostly, and if you have time, do exercise 2 as well. Next is select boxes, and we're going to take a look at how the select boxes are constructed using different options. So here we are going to use select box tag helper first, and then we are going to use a select box model object helper, and then we are going to use a form builder, and then we are going to use form builder using model array. So you can actually build these things using different options. So this is the using tag builder, tag helper. So select name and ID. This is the HTML, the output. Well, the select box is a little bit kind of tricky because you have to provide all these options. Okay, so typically if you are creating select box using HTML, then you use the select and then name and ID, and then you provide these options. Okay, and then you can specify which one is selected as a default. So this is basically what you see if you use this guy. So if you're using select box tag helper, you are going to use a select tag and then provide a name, and then you can use options for select. So then you provide an array. Okay, an array is basically the key value pairs. Okay, the value and the string that gets displayed, and the value from when the value is selected, and this is the default value. Okay, and when this is selected, the controller code can actually access what has been selected using params cdid. Okay, using cdid as a name. Okay, so this is how you are going to be able to use a select box tag helper. Okay. Now, this is actually using a model object helper, so work pretty much the same here. Instead of using tag helper, we are just using select. Okay, and then we are going to just specify the name. Okay, and then cdid. So this is a model object, right? And this is a cdid, and then we still provide this is actually provide. Yeah, this is an array. Now, in this case, the difference between the previous version and this version is that if the cdid if the student object is already set, the default value is actually coming from this guy. Okay, so here you don't have to specify the default value as we have done in previous case. I'm going to just use this guy. Okay. All right, because the Rails will try to read a CDID attribute, and then that's what it's going to use as a default selection. Now the third option is using a form builder. So we are using form 4, and then we provide a mul object, and then here we're going to use the select method from a form builder object, and then we provide a CDID, and then we provide the same deal, okay, the array. Okay. Now, so far, what we have done is that we are creating this options array manually, and this is actually very inconvenient, right? I mean, whenever you need to add another the option, then you have to change this array, and that's not good enough, right? So what we want to do is we want to create this array from the model object collection. That's typically what you want to do. Basically, we have a collection of model objects, and that's what you want to use as options for select. So that's 3.b. So in this case, we can actually create the cities array. Okay, so basically we can do the cities array like this, the name and ID, and assuming we were able to create the cities array, then we just provide the cities array like this. Okay, or we can use even more convenient method of the form builder. Let's say collection and underscore select, and then we can just provide the city all the basically collection object. Okay. All right. Moving forward, so select helper is a little bit special, and there is another special helper which is the date and time. Okay, so the reason date and time helpers are different from other form helpers are because of these two aspects. Date and times are not representable by a single input element. Instead, you have several, one for each component, like year, month, and day. Okay. So there is no single value in your params hash with a date or time. Okay, and other helpers could use the underscore tag suffix to indicate the helper is a bare-bone helper. So when you say bare-bone helper, you are talking about tag helper. If you don't have it, then we are actually talking about model object helper, and we cannot actually do that for dates and time, right? So that convention does not apply for date and time form helpers. Okay, so we need to have a new naming scheme. Okay, so the new naming scheme is that select date, select time, and select date and time. These are considered as a bare-bone helpers, like a tag helpers. Okay, when you're using reverse of it, date select, time select, and date time select, then these are considered as a model object helpers. Okay, so the convention of those underscore tag doesn't apply to date and time, and these are the naming conventions that we are going to use. Okay, so this is a case where bare-bone date and time helpers are being used. So this is the date and time. Okay, and the HTML output is going to be like a start date, and we have to actually have 3 different elements. Okay. And again, that will actually generate the start date year, and start date month, and start date day, like this. And this is a case we are using model object. So instead of using the date select, we are going to use select date. That's bare-bone, and we are just using date select, and then you provide a model. So that's a bit more convenient, right? Okay. So it will generate HTML like this. Okay, as we have seen in previous case, and then this will be what you can access. I mean, the param is going to be in the form of like this. Okay. Okay, helper modules. So helper modules are, it's a collection of helper methods that you want to. I mean, if you have a helper methods that do not belong to, some controller, as an action, then you can include it in your helper module. Okay, so helper module contains methods that can be called in views to help keep your code dry. So any code that you are repeating regularly should be moved to a helper. So it's located under app helpers directory. So if you go over here, we have this helpers directory, and we have in fact the application level helper, and in the form of a module. So you can add some methods here, and then this is a controller level helper module, Okay, so whatever method that you think you are going to be able to use in the in controller, various controllers, then you might want to actually add it here. Okay. All right, so that is that. So this is a case that we add controller helper module example. So basically, add a method called the select country choices, and then we are basically creating one, and then we can just use that method right here. Okay. All right, so we're going to do exercise 4 and 5, and then we'll have lunch. So let's take a look at the exercise 4 and 5. So here we are going to actually create a project, which is a bit more involved. It's not simple hello world like application you've been building. So when you run the application, it's going to be something like let's see, something like, yeah, we have a CSS file as well and all that stuff. So this is something like, so okay, so it's not that much more complicated than the hello world application you've been building, but it's a bit more involved, like even CSS file. So let's take a look at that. I want to go to the end of the top of the exercise. So we're going to create a brand new project with new college, and then we are going to generate scaffolding on student, and student has a name and age. And now we are going to have a country. So we have a country and student relationship. Okay, so the student belongs to country. So if you want to actually create country model object along with a student, you can actually do this. Okay, or what we have done before is that we actually scaffolding and country, and then we manually change things, right? We just add belongs to, and then has many things. So but if you actually do country belongs to, then this scaffolding will create both model, student and country model for you. Okay. All right, so now this is a student, and we're going to add some validation. Validation has to be, name has to be unique, age is numericality, and then we are going to set some constant values. Name size is 20, max size is 40, age has to be, age size has to be just 3 letters. Okay. All right, so that is the student, and now we are going to create the country model. Okay, yeah, so I think I misspoke. So when you say country belongs to, it will actually, add the belongs to in your student model. It doesn't create a country automatically. Okay, so you still have to create the country model. Okay, generate model country. Okay, and now if you take a look at the country, country, then you have to actually add has many students, and you want to add the validation for the name, and here we are going to actually add some kind of business logic in country model. So if you happen to have actually business logic that that is model class specific, that you can add that in your the model class, or you could actually have this list countries in your helper module. Either one is fine. So we perform migration. So we create the students table as well as countries table. Okay, and the relationship has been already set. And then we are going to modify student controller. So here, before actions or countries, it's going to call countries method for new, edit, update, and create actions. So basically, all you do is that we actually call the list countries model class method from a country model class we just have seen, and then we are assigning into countries instance variable. Okay. And then we are going to modify the partial. So we are going to actually take a look at the form HTML partial, and we are going to actually modify the partial, and we are basically using select box and checkboxes. Okay, so we are going to replace the following code. So we are going to just comment this out. Okay, with the form builder. So form now, and so yeah. So here we are actually using the class form now class. Okay, and this is using a select and here we are using helper method, which we are going to actually add to the helper module, and these are radio buttons. Okay, and then we are going to add a helper to the helper module. So we just add select country choices, and you basically create the map for that. Okay, for that the select case that we have actually learned in the presentation, and then we have new and edit that remains the same, and for show we are going to instead of just displaying country, we want to display the country name. So if you don't do this, it will just display some kind of a reference number, so obviously that's not really useful. So we want to display the country name. Okay, and the same thing for the indexed HTML file. So instead of actually displaying country object, we want to display country name. Okay, and then we can create the test data for adding some data. So this is an example where creating the array object, right? And then we have a student. So basically adding some some hash. Okay, and then we're going to use this hash to create the test data. And the platforms has a platforms array, and then here we are basically creating the students test data. So we delete students and country first of all, and then for each country we are going to create the country. So basically from the countries array we create all the countries here, and then we are going to country and name and students. We are basically adding these students to basically we are just creating student. Okay, these are test data. Okay, and stuff down is actually deleting both country and student, and we perform migration so that we create this test data, and then we're going to modify application scope layout. So here we are going to change the application HTML ELB file. What you want to do is we want to display the action of the controller, and then we are going to display the intentional college and then content, and yeah, so this is basically nothing much. Okay, and then we are going to modify student.css as CSS file with this. Okay, so this is basically, this is not really as a CSS, but these are CSS code. Okay, and this CSS code is going to be used to display. Yeah, so you can just copy these things onto this guy, student.css as CSS says. And in terms of routing, we just have this root routing. Okay, and then you run the application, and then you're going to actually see this. Okay, so and then you can create one. Okay, so you can see this is actually one-to-many relationship between country and student. Okay, and we're actually exercising various form helpers. Okay, and that is that. And now the next one is yeah, so this is creating a new student. Yeah, and we do also do validation, right? Okay, next one is we are going to add a search to the application. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to add this form tag. Okay, so this form tag is for adding the search. Okay, so this is something that we talked about in the presentation, right? Okay, so we add this form tag like this. Okay, and then in our index HTML file, we want to actually perform the search. Okay, so the keyword is coming from the client. Okay, and we want to actually search using like the pattern. Okay, and basically if the keyword is nil, we display everyone, and if keyword is not nil, then we are going to perform where operation for that. Okay, and so when you actually perform, let's say, AN search, okay, then it will display anybody whose name happened to start with the AN. Okay, so not that bad. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna give you guys 10 minutes for this exercise 4 and 5, and we'll have a 30 minutes lunch. Yeah, I know I'm not giving you enough lunch time for the lab time, but hopefully you can use your lunch time a bit for that. Okay, so we will be back at 1. Okay.